you ever wondered if the Old Testament documents more than just religious and historical accounts? Picture this, a cornerstone of religious and historical scholarship, the Old Testament, chronicling not only the early history and spiritual teachings of the Jewish people, but also extraterrestrial encounters. Sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel, doesn't it? Well, welcome to the unconventional world of the Ancient Astronaut Theory. This theory, residing on the edges of academic discourse, proposes a radical interpretation of the Old Testament. It suggests that these sacred narratives might have been influenced by non-human, technologically advanced beings from outer space. Yes, you heard it right, beings from outer space. The Ancient Astronaut Theory takes us on a journey beyond the traditional realms of theology and history. It invites us to question, to probe, to think outside the box. It dares to suggest that the gods of ancient civilizations, the miraculous events, the otherworldly phenomena documented in the Old Testament might not be purely divine interventions, but interactions with advanced technologies or even extraterrestrials. From fiery chariots in the book of Ezekiel to the construction of the Ark of the Covenant in the book of Exodus, the Ancient Astronaut Theory offers a fresh, albeit controversial lens to view these biblical narratives. Could these accounts be descriptions of alien spacecraft? Could the Ark be a communication or energy device provided by extraterrestrial visitors? The answers aren't clear, but the questions are undoubtedly intriguing. And that's the unconventional angle. This theory may not align with mainstream scholars or theologians, but it certainly adds a layer of mystery and wonder to the ancient texts. It pushes the boundaries of our understanding, it challenges our assumptions, and it opens up a world of possibilities. So, are you ready to dive into this fascinating theory, to explore the unconventional, the extraordinary, the out of this world? Let us delve into the origins of this fascinating theory. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're about to embark on an incredible journey. Our journey begins in the 1960s and 1970s with Erich von Däniken and Zecharia Sitchin. These two individuals were not just theorists, they were pioneers who dared to look at ancient texts and artifacts through an unconventional lens. They posed a question that would ignite a new interpretation of our past. Could the gods of ancient civilizations be extraterrestrials? This was the birth of the Ancient Astronaut Theory. A theory that doesn't dismiss the religious or historical importance of texts like the Old Testament, but instead adds another layer of interpretation. It suggests that these ancient documents might not only chronicle the spiritual journey of humanity, but also our interactions with beings from the stars. Däniken and Sitchin dared to reimagine our understanding of divine encounters. They proposed that the miracles, the visions, the divine interventions mentioned in these texts might not be purely supernatural, but could be interactions with technologically advanced beings. Beings that our ancestors, in their limited understanding, perceived as gods. This theory doesn't stop at religious texts. It extends to archaeological ruins and artifacts. Take, for example, the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, or the Nazca Lines. These architectural marvels have long puzzled scientists and historians. How could civilizations with such primitive tools construct these complex structures? The Ancient Astronaut Theory proposes a provocative answer. What if they had help? What if they were guided by extraterrestrial beings? But remember, the Ancient Astronaut Theory is speculative. It's a fringe concept not endorsed by mainstream scholars or theologians. It's an idea that challenges our understanding of history, religion, and our place in the universe. It's an idea that invites you to question, to explore, to think beyond the known. Now let's apply this theory to the Old Testament. We will delve deep into the biblical narratives, looking for descriptions that might hint at extraterrestrial encounters. We will explore the technological anomalies that appear in these ancient texts. And finally, we will attempt to reimagine Yahweh, not as a divine entity, but as an advanced being from the stars. Imagine reading the Old Testament with a different lens, one that views fiery chariots and miraculous events as encounters with advanced technologies. Now, this is where the Ancient Astronaut Theory gets truly fascinating. Proponents often point to specific passages in the Old Testament that could be interpreted as descriptions of alien encounters. Take, for instance, the vision of a fiery chariot in the book of Ezekiel. The vivid description of a vehicle with wheels within wheels, moving in any direction and filled with fire, can be seen as more than a divine vision. Could it be a primitive description of an alien spacecraft, one that was beyond the comprehension of the prophet Ezekiel? Another interesting example is the story of the Tower of Babel. The Old Testament tells us that humanity, united and speaking a single language, decided to build a tower that would reach the heavens. In response, God confounded their speech, making them unable to understand each other, and scattered them across the earth. Now, through the lens of the Ancient Astronaut Theory, this could be interpreted as an extraterrestrial intervention to prevent humanity from advancing too quickly. The sudden inability to communicate and cooperate could be seen as the result of sophisticated technology altering human cognition. Then there's the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. The cities were destroyed by what the Bible describes as a rain of fire and brimstone from the heavens. Could this fire and brimstone have been some kind of extraterrestrial weapon or a targeted meteor strike? It's a possibility that theorists of the Ancient Astronaut Theory don't shy away from considering. And how about the parting of the Red Sea? A natural event, divine intervention? Or could it be the result of highly advanced technology, capable of manipulating the environment on a massive scale? What about the manna from heaven that fed the Israelites during their exodus from Egypt? Was it a divine miracle, or could it have been sustenance provided by extraterrestrial visitors, perhaps using advanced methods of food production or even matter replication? All these biblical events, when viewed through this unconventional lens, seem to take on a new dimension, hinting at the possibility of encounters with non-human entities possessing technology far beyond our current understanding. One of the most intriguing subjects in this theory is the Ark of the Covenant, but we'll delve into that in our next segment. For now, let's just sit with the idea that our ancestors might not have been alone, and that the miracles we've grown up hearing about might have been their best attempts to describe encounters with advanced technologies, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. The Ark of the Covenant, a divine artifact or an advanced communication device? The Ancient Astronaut Theory pulls us towards the latter. Let's delve into why. The Ark, as described in the book of Exodus, was a gold-plated wooden chest with precise dimensions, capable of unleashing powerful forces. This wasn't just any artifact, this was a centerpiece of the Israelites' faith. Now let's add a twist of the extraterrestrial into this biblical narrative. Theorists speculate that the Ark might not have been just a holy relic, but rather a piece of advanced technology, an energy device or a communication tool, perhaps. The description of the Ark in the Scriptures, with its meticulous dimensions and its seemingly supernatural powers, does leave one wondering if it could have been a product of a technologically advanced civilization. Think about it. The Ark was said to have been able to level city walls, strike individuals dead, and even communicate the divine will. It was also always hidden behind a veil, and only a select few were allowed to handle it. It was revered and feared, much like how we might respond to an unknown, powerful technology today. The theorists propose that the Ark might have been provided by extraterrestrial visitors. These visitors, seen as gods due to their advanced capabilities, could have given this device to the Israelites. In their understanding, it was a divine artifact, a gift from their God, which they dutifully housed in the holiest of their spaces. So we have the Ark of the Covenant, a crucial element of the Old Testament, potentially being a piece of alien technology. A wild thought indeed, but one that makes you look at the biblical narratives from a whole new perspective. But what about Yahweh, the God of the Israelites? Yahweh, often associated with dramatic natural phenomena, could be seen as a technologically advanced being. Let's delve into this fascinating perspective, shall we? In the Old Testament, Yahweh is often depicted in conjunction with awe-inspiring natural phenomena such as fire, smoke, and thunderous noises. Traditionally, these manifestations have been interpreted as divine expressions of his power and presence. However, the Ancient Astronaut Theory suggests an alternate interpretation. What if these grand displays were not supernatural but technologically driven interactions? Imagine for a moment an advanced extraterrestrial being using technology beyond our current understanding to communicate with humans. Fire and smoke could be the byproducts of advanced propulsion systems. Thunderous noises might be the result of powerful energy discharges. The sky, often associated with the divine, could simply be the place from where these advanced beings descended or ascended. Now let's consider the character of Yahweh himself. Traditionally viewed as a divine figure, Yahweh is portrayed as an interventionist God, often interacting directly with humans and the world. He's described as guiding individuals, influencing events, and even using his power to punish or reward. These active and direct interactions are somewhat atypical when compared to many deities who are often portrayed as more passive or abstract entities. But what if Yahweh's active involvement was not due to his divinity, but rather his extraterrestrial nature? Consider this. An advanced being from another world with technology that would appear magical to our ancestors could easily influence events and guide people. They could seem omnipotent and omniscient, especially to a civilization with limited scientific understanding. Of course, this is not to diminish the religious or spiritual significance of Yahweh. For many, Yahweh is a symbol of divine love, guidance, and protection. Our intention is not to challenge these beliefs, but rather to explore alternative interpretations that could broaden our understanding of these ancient texts. Interestingly, Yahweh is not the only deity described in such a way. Many ancient cultures have gods who descended from the skies, demonstrated advanced knowledge or abilities, and interacted directly with humans. Could these similarities across cultures suggest a common origin, perhaps an extraterrestrial one? In conclusion, while the traditional interpretation of Yahweh as a divine being is deeply rooted in religious teachings and beliefs, the Ancient Astronaut Theory offers a fascinating alternative. It suggests that Yahweh could be an advanced extraterrestrial being using technology to interact with humans and influence events. This interpretation, while speculative, invites us to view these ancient texts through a new lens, opening up possibilities for a greater understanding of our history. Yet, Yahweh is not the only deity associated with such phenomena. As we will see in our next segment, there are other gods from different cultures who share similar characteristics, perhaps suggesting a common extraterrestrial influence. Across the world, ancient cultures describe deities descending from the skies or demonstrating significant technological knowledge. Now, let's take a moment to appreciate the vast tapestry of human mythology, rich with stories of gods and celestial beings. When we look closely, we notice intriguing parallels between these narratives and the descriptions of Yahweh in the Old Testament. Consider the ancient Greek tales of gods descending from Mount Olympus, often in chariots of fire, similar to the fiery chariot that Ezekiel describes, or the Hindu texts that speak of vimanas, flying palaces or chariots which bear a curious resemblance to the Ark of the Covenant's described abilities. In the ancient cultures of Mesoamerica, deities were often associated with the sky and stars. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god of the Aztecs, was said to have come from the heavens. This mirrors the Old Testament's depiction of Yahweh appearing amidst dramatic natural phenomena like fire and smoke, possibly interpreted as an advanced being descending from the sky. Even in the Far East, Chinese legends tell of the Yellow Emperor who came to Earth on a dragon that could sing. It's easy to see how this singing dragon might be another culture's interpretation of an advanced technology, like the thunderous noises associated with Yahweh's presence. These widespread narratives have led some to suggest that different ancient civilizations might have encountered the same extraterrestrial visitors, interpreting their technology and knowledge as divine. This idea, while certainly unconventional, offers a fascinating lens through which to view our shared human history. It challenges us to consider whether our ancestors were documenting encounters with otherworldly beings, using the language and concepts they had at their disposal. So, what does this mean for our understanding of the divine? Well, that's a question that's as complex as it is intriguing, but it's clear that our interpretations of these ancient texts can shift dramatically when we consider the possibility of extraterrestrial influence. Whether you're a believer in the Ancient Astronaut Theory or not, this perspective can certainly add another layer to our understanding of ancient religions and mythologies. The depiction of Yahweh contrasts starkly with the God of the New Testament, suggesting potential interactions with different types of beings. This contrast in divine characteristics is indeed striking. In the Old Testament, we encounter a God who is often wrathful and interventionist, directly influencing events in the world and even meting out harsh punishments. The God of the Old Testament is a force to be reckoned with, a being of power and might, who brooks no insolence and demands total obedience. But then, when we turn the pages to the New Testament, we meet a different God, one who is characterized by love, forgiveness, and spiritual depth. This God does not smite wrongdoers or cause floods to wipe out wicked cities. Instead, he offers forgiveness, encourages repentance, and teaches the virtues of love and mercy. This is a God who is less about commandments etched in stone and more about principles written in the heart. Now, if we view these texts through the lens of the Ancient Astronaut Theory, an intriguing possibility emerges. Could these contrasting depictions of God be the result of interactions with different types of extraterrestrial beings, or perhaps they reflect varying interpretations of the same encounters with advanced entities over time? Consider this. The wrathful interventionist God of the Old Testament could be seen as an advanced being who uses technology to manipulate natural phenomena and directly intervene in human affairs. Thunder, fire, floods, these could all be the work of an extraterrestrial entity with the technology to control the forces of nature. On the other hand, the loving, forgiving God of the New Testament could be another type of extraterrestrial being, one more interested in guiding human spiritual development than in commanding obedience. This being's teachings about love, forgiveness, and the kingdom within could be seen as an advanced moral code, a blueprint for a harmonious society. These interpretations are, of course, speculative. They push the boundaries of traditional theology and venture into the realm of science fiction. But isn't that what makes them so intriguing? The possibility that our ancient religious texts might contain hidden layers of meaning, stories of extraterrestrial encounters disguised as divine revelations. And finally, how does Jesus fit into this picture? The New Testament tells us that Jesus is the Son of God, sent to earth to teach humanity about love and forgiveness. Could Jesus have been an extraterrestrial emissary, an advanced being sent to guide us towards a more enlightened way of life? Or perhaps Jesus was a human who had a profound encounter with these extraterrestrial beings and was inspired to spread their teachings. This is where the Ancient Astronaut Theory leaves us with a host of intriguing questions and possibilities. It invites us to look at our ancient texts with fresh eyes, to consider the possibility that they might contain more than just spiritual teachings, but also chronicles of humanity's early encounters with beings from beyond our world. The teachings of Jesus, focusing on mercy, forgiveness, and the concept of an internal kingdom, differ significantly from the Old Testament. This shift in philosophical focus from the more interventionist approach of the Old Testament to the introspective teachings of Jesus in the New Testament is quite striking. The Old Testament often portrays a divine presence that manifests in the physical world, performing miraculous feats and intervening directly in human affairs. This depiction aligns with the Ancient Astronaut Theory's interpretation of these accounts as potential interactions with technologically advanced beings. Contrastingly, Jesus' teachings in the New Testament center on the spiritual realm. His lessons are less about external interventions and more about introspective journeys. He speaks of concepts such as turning the other cheek, loving one's neighbor, and the kingdom of God being within us. These teachings emphasize personal transformation and spiritual growth, a stark departure from the more tangible, physical interactions described in the Old Testament. This philosophical shift could suggest a different interpretation of divine or extraterrestrial encounters. Perhaps the beings described in the Old Testament were not gods, but advanced entities interacting with humanity in a physical, tangible way. Maybe Jesus' teachings reflect a more symbolic, less literal interpretation of these encounters, focusing on spiritual growth and personal transformation rather than physical manifestations. Or, as some ancient astronaut theorists propose, could it be that the New Testament represents a different phase of extraterrestrial interaction? A phase less about direct intervention and more about imparting spiritual wisdom and moral guidance. Could Jesus' teachings be an advanced being's attempt to guide humanity towards spiritual evolution? It's important to note that these are speculative interpretations, existing on the fringes of mainstream academic and theological discourse. They are not universally accepted and should be approached with a critical mind, yet they offer an intriguing perspective, inviting us to question our assumptions and explore new possibilities. The Ancient Astronaut Theory's interpretation of Jesus' teachings as potential extraterrestrial guidance is a fascinating idea, challenging our conventional understanding of these biblical narratives. It encourages us to view these ancient texts not just as religious documents, but also as potential historical records of humanity's interaction with advanced beings. This exploration leaves us with more questions than answers. Was the shift in philosophical focus from the Old to the New Testament a result of evolving human understanding, or could it indicate different phases of extraterrestrial interaction? What are the implications of viewing Jesus' teachings through the lens of the Ancient Astronaut Theory? These are intriguing questions inviting further exploration and discussion. As we delve deeper into these narratives, we are reminded that our understanding of the past is constantly evolving, shaped by new perspectives and interpretations. And perhaps hidden within these ancient texts are clues waiting to be discovered, shedding light on our extraordinary history. We've journeyed through the Ancient Astronaut Theory and its application to the Old Testament, but what have we learned? We've explored an unconventional perspective, one that suggests the Old Testament might be more than just a religious and historical cornerstone. This view, known as the Ancient Astronaut Theory, ventures that these ancient texts could potentially document extraterrestrial encounters. It's an interpretation that, while speculative and not endorsed by mainstream scholars, provides a fascinating lens through which to view these age-old narratives. We delved into the origins of this theory, tracing it back to the 60s and 70s when figures like Erich von Däniken and Zecharia Sitchin brought it into the limelight. They proposed that the gods of ancient civilizations were not mythical or supernatural beings, but rather extraterrestrials. They looked at religious texts, artifacts, and archaeological ruins and saw potential evidence of historic human extraterrestrial contact. We examined specific passages in the Old Testament through this lens. The vision of a fiery chariot in the book of Ezekiel, for instance, has been interpreted as a possible description of an alien spacecraft. Other miraculous events and otherworldly phenomena were also considered in this new light, suggesting they might be accounts of interactions with advanced technologies rather than strictly divine interventions. The construction of the Ark of the Covenant, as detailed in the Book of Exodus, was another point of focus. The Ark, with its precise dimensions and ability to unleash powerful forces, was speculated to be a communication or energy device given by extraterrestrial visitors. The Israelites, in their understanding, revered it as a divine artifact. We also contemplated the idea of Yahweh as an extraterrestrial entity. In the Old Testament, Yahweh often appears in forms associated with dramatic natural phenomena, fire, smoke, and thunderous noises. Could these manifestations be the presence of an advanced being using technology to interact with humans? That's what the Ancient Astronaut Theory suggests. We brought in comparative mythology, highlighting similarities between the descriptions of Yahweh and deities from other ancient cultures who allegedly descended from the skies or demonstrated significant technological knowledge. These comparisons support the idea of a common extraterrestrial influence across different ancient civilizations. And finally, we looked at the theological implications of this theory. The portrayal of Yahweh in the Old Testament often includes wrathful and interventionist behavior, a stark contrast to the depiction of God in the New Testament, who is characterized by love, forgiveness, and spiritual depth. Some theorists argue these differences may indicate interactions with different types of beings or varying interpretations of the same extraterrestrial encounters over time. So we've journeyed through a unique interpretation of the Old Testament, one that sees potential evidence of extraterrestrial encounters in its pages. Whether you subscribe to these ideas or not, they certainly provide food for thought. So next time you pick up the Old Testament, you might just see it in a different light.